The staffing industry grows at about 15% year on year. And the staffing industry currently in India is about 16 to 18 billion dollars, depending on which report you look at.
For the audience, let's define what specialist staffing means, and what are those key factors that essentially define specialist staffing to begin with.
A product company, operating in India, a fairly well established product company, always looks for talent because they work with very should I say exacting metrics of productivity, and they also have a huge headcount restriction from time to time. Yet some of their projects need to be staffed with the help of externals, and we come into play in those kind of scenarios. We help them hire people. It could be 50, 60, 100, maybe 150 people.
What would you give as an advice to young staffing professionals who are coming into this industry, and what would you tell them to keep in mind for the future?
I can tell you the staffing industry itself suffers from huge talent deficit. So if you are somebody who commits a certain number of years, initially it may be tough, but over a period of time, I think you can gain. And the staffing industry is going to be about $50-60 billion in the coming years. Let's say by 2030, 2035. There's going to be a lot more players. There's going to be a lot more opportunities if you commit a certain number of time frame. So I think the future is quite good for staffing industry professionals.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hyreo Rise series of podcasts. So today we're going to delve a little bit into what we've been hearing a lot in terms of specialist staffing and how we're really looking at it from talent acquisition, especially in the GCC context, some of the larger organizations. How has specialist staffing evolved post-COVID? Where are we heading in the context of all the AI and disruption that is happening around? And no better person to talk about specialist staffing than Anil Ethanur. A warm welcome to the podcast series today. Thank you so much for joining us. Anil comes with around 2.5 decades of experience in recruiting and talent acquisition. He is currently the co-founder of Xpheno, which is one of the fastest growing specialist staffing firms in the country. Anil, thank you so much for joining. Would love to have you do a quick introduction about yourself for the audience, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Arun. Thanks for having me on your show. Firstly, I'm a talent acquisition professional. I spent my first 5 years in in-house roles. I used to work for a couple of mid-sized IT companies before I decided to make a switch to the vendor ecosystem, which is when I joined India's largest HR services company in the year 2000. And since then, I've been hooked on to this space. I've spent now 25 years. First, let's say 15, 16 years in working for companies, and last 8 years as an entrepreneur. I'm so hooked on to this. I also chose to become an entrepreneur in the same space. So I would say that I put money where my mouth is. So I was a recruiter to begin with. Then I became a branch head. Then I became a business head. Then I became a country head of a Japanese HR services company. And then the co-founder of staffing in a company called Xpheno, which is a specialist staffing company, along with my friend and long-time colleague, ex-colleague of mine and friend, Kamal Karant. So 8 years into Xpheno is where we are now.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Anil, for the introduction. Let me start with that. What keeps you going in specialist staffing after 25 years in recruiting? What is the motivation factor, Anil?
Well, the industry can be broadly categorized into two broad, large segments. One is what we would call as general staffing, which entails, hiring and deploying people in the lower-end white-collar roles, as well as blue collar and gray collar roles. It's more about bringing people into formal employment. That's what the general staffing segment entails. We chose to be in the specialist staffing because we had deep interest in IT and automotive areas, and we chose, to be in that space to begin with. Hopefully, we will do other sectors and segments in the coming years, but we've now expanded our presence in these two industry segments. Not to say that we don't do entry-level general staffing business, we do, but we want the proportion of the special staffing to be far higher and significant in the coming years. So we are in general staffing as well as specialist staffing segments, but we do direct hire, we do RPO programs, and also we find for our clients a high-skilled workforce in IT and automotive. So that's what we do. The headroom for growth. The staffing industry grows at about 15% year on year. And the staffing industry currently in India is about $16 to $18 billion, depending on which report you would look at. But this is the market size that we see. Globally, the staffing industry is about 600 billion plus, but in India we are 16 to 18 billion. And I think we see continuous opportunities for growth, though there are these black swan moments such as the COVID that we saw, or have been witness to the financial meltdown that we saw in 2008, even 2000 when there's a dot-com bust that we were witness to. So all of these moments, in fact, promote contract staffing, contingent workforce significantly. So while direct hiring could go through ups and downs, but the contract staffing or contingent staffing or flexi staffing, as we call it, always sees sort of a continuous progression and rise. And today we see that companies, about 8 to 10% of their workforce is contractual. I'm not including the gig workers, but I'm talking primarily from a contingent workforce standpoint. Most companies have configured their organization to have about 8 to 10% of their workforce as contingent. So the significant headroom for growth. And we also found that though there are quite a number of players, the specialist staffing segment has more potential for us to grow. That's why we chose to operate in this segment. And of course, the margins being high and the return on investment, return on capital, and all of that also being high, we thought that's a segment that we could do well. So that's what prompted us to be in this segment.
Now, for the audience, right, Anil, you mentioned about some of those nuances of staffing, and $16 to $18 billion growing at 15% is a significant market to go after. But for the audience, let's define what specialist staffing means, and what are those key factors that essentially define specialist staffing to begin with. We'll park general staffing for a second, but I think that's something that people understand. What's so special about specialist staffing?
Yeah, one is when you try to find higher skilled workforce, automatically we look at that as specialist staffing. So say an IT company, which is either in services or product company or a global captive, they continuously need talent of various kinds. One is what we call as FTEs, which is full-time employees. But they have a lot of external workforce, which is the contingent labor. And because they also have to deal with their peaks and troughs, and maybe they also want to keep a certain percentage of their payroll variable, they tend to go for contract workforce, contingent workforce. So as I said, about 8 to 10% of this, like the IT industry is about 6 million now. So if you look at 8 to 10% of that is also significant. So of that, workforce, whether it is in IT, whether you're looking at a full stack developer or a DevOps professional or a service desk person or a testing professional. Any of these roles, could be, on a contingent mode. In the automotive space, could be, CAE, CAD, technical publishing. Many areas could be where contingent workforce is deployed or used. That's a space that we would like to operate. And there are many other segments, could be in healthcare and could be in other segments going forward. We see opportunities in all of these spaces.
Can I request an example of, let's say, there's 8 to 10%, which is obviously that space that we're getting into. You take an example of a GIC, or you take an example of an IT services, or even a automotive R&D. For the audience, any examples where, an organization like Xpheno was able to come in and fulfill something? Could be time to hire, could be deployment of the right set of talent. Anything for the audience to kind of relate to what we do on top of a general perm staffing or an FT based employment staffing, let's say, or a placement service.
Yeah. So a product company, operating in India, a fairly well established product company, always looks for talent because they work with very, should I say, exacting metrics of productivity, and they also have a huge headcount restriction from time to time. Yet some of their projects need to be staffed with the help of externals, and we come into play in those kind of scenarios. We help them hire, people. It could be 50, 60, 100, maybe 150 people. And the client has an option of absorbing, making these roles, full-time after a certain period of them trying out these staff that they hire on a contingent mode. So it becomes a longer selection process in a way for them. And they also able to circumvent the headcount restrictions that the headquarters may have for them temporarily. But once these headcount restrictions come off, they are in a position to convert them. So we work with a product company, a very, very large product company, and also an automotive company, a European automotive company. And auto sales also are prone to a lot of ups and downs, like the one that we're seeing currently. Some of their global markets are extremely challenged. In fact, this company, tends to hire quite a number of external workforce, and these peaks and troughs can be navigated, circumvented with the help of contractual workforce, and it doesn't attract any negative, connotation when if they would lay off a certain number of externals. It doesn't attract any negative press or negative employer branding kind of an image. So they tend to use, the contractual workforce to help them navigate these difficult situations. So there are a number of examples of these kinds.
Yeah, the last point that you mentioned, Anil, I'll keep it towards the end. One of the challenges that staffing firms are going to face when you have this downturn and when you have this quick change and people being moved out. We'll come to that in a minute, but let me ask you another related question. Now, a lot of these large organizations are used to RPOs and MSP sort of programs where there's a large partner of sorts who basically does this. So, precision hiring is about having that. The right skill, the examples that you took, be it automotive or product companies, these are not the general high volume, run-of-the-mill sort of skills. They're specialized skills that comes in the context of playing that RPO role or being that MSP for a large product company or an automotive major. How does specialist staffing kind of fall into that? How do we manage that? Because the expectation could be slightly different as well.
Well, RPO and MSP providers themselves can be seen as, companies that offer specialist services. They're in advisory businesses. They can be seen as enablers, of people supply chain. So their challenge is to meet, a certain number of hires, which is a scale, operate within a budget, or deal with certain complexities, right? So I want to make a distinction between RPO and MSP. In certain ways, they can be seen together, but RPO is a play when you're trying to hire FTEs. And generally, it's a single vendor kind of a situation. And sometimes there are two vendors. You segment the roles and divide it amongst two vendors, and an RPO, two RPO players or one RPO player, comes to a scenario and helps them hire those many numbers. Well, MSP is a solution where you stitch together a number of players, number of other staffing companies, and you bring people, process, technology to enable delivery of the talent that is required. And generally, MSP is a term used, or not generally, but mostly it's used in the case where you're looking at contingent labor. Okay, and here the metrics are around speed, scale, quality, and price parameters. So as I said, it's a supply chain solution. Even in India today, there are more than 100 MSP programs running. It's hard to put a number on RPOs, but MSP we can kind of estimate that there are more than 100 programs. So that's a distinction between RPO and MSP, but both these bring advisory component into it. They bring all of these elements of speed, scale, quality, and price. And they bring technology, they bring people, they bring process, which helps the client eventually meet the goal of talent, whether it's contingent or FTE, help them meet their demands. And mostly these companies have limited internal capability, or they don't want to build that internal capability because they want to keep these business enabling roles leaner. So they tend to choose or go for experts in the market. And it can be seen as a procurement decision or a supply chain decision, as I mentioned earlier. So it's not purely an HR or a TA kind of a dimension. There are other, services procurement kind of dimensions to this, and therefore these other, functions come into the picture when they're selecting a vendor. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Let me move from today to tomorrow. And we spoke about the essentially what makes an MSP, what makes an RPO, what is specialist staffing. Looked at it from the view of a customer, looking at, hey, what are we doing differently, to actually the future. COVID was a major disruption. It dramatically changed. CPOs and CHROs became board members or got a board seat. People started really looking at how do we have talent which runs these organizations, managed remotely, have different kinds of hybrid to gig to whatnot, that we kind of started seeing a lot of quick experimentation in the last 3-4 years post, let's say, COVID. Now, from here to the next 5 years, let's say, right? There is AI, there is huge amounts of macro level political situations which are evolving and changing quite rapidly. In your view, how is the whole staffing, RPO, MSP space going to evolve, let's say, in the next 5 years from here?
Well, it's been a progressive movement. I wouldn't say, a COVID had to really trigger something. But as tools get better and better, and there are more service providers in this landscape. We find that companies are more willing to entrust their critical task of finding talent to experts. So while it's not a thing triggered by any specific event, but I would say that ongoing development of vendors and tools really help companies have the confidence that they can rely on an expert or an external vendor. So we've been seeing this RPO MSP programs on the rise, and many global companies have set shop to offer such services. Earlier we used to find maybe Singapore and APAC and Western markets adopting more of these services, but then when these global companies have an India component, for sure, these services are being accessed. So without going to any specific event as such, I do see progressively, these services being much more in demand. And I only, think that it's good. Since you have access to these services, you may as well depend on it. You can go after this. Some of them are in the what we call a second generation, third generation of programs, which is having tried out for the first 2-3 years. They've gone on, taking more sophisticated offerings. And some of the metrics that they measure is, of course, speed to hire, diversity parameters. Can a vendor offer wide coverage? If I have 15 or 16 or even 100 kind of skills, can one or two vendors provide me that coverage of skills? Cost, I mentioned this earlier. Can these companies offer me branding, services? And ultimately, they're also looking for, hiring manager satisfaction and better candidate engagement as well. Like I said, in a competitive environment, you do want to, handle your, candidate, pool. You want to keep engaging, them, whether you have a specific requirement now or you're going to have it maybe a year down the line. You want to, keep your specific candidate pool segment engaged. So these services are being offered, particularly in the second and third generation programs. So I only see that, kind of enhancing as we go, in the next few years. Yeah.
And you see GCC is going to push this even further in the coming years. They're going to be the key driver for, stage level 2 or 3 kind of programs, as you said, or is it going to be India-based conglomerates, India-based service companies, for example, or is it going to be GCCs driving that more?
Well, in all the cohorts that are there, whether it's IT services or global captives or product companies or even startups, out of these different cohorts, of course, the global captives have started to hire more than other cohorts that I just mentioned. So more than 100,000 people are being hired in global captives, and every year we have about 50 to 60 of such units being set up in India. So of course their need to hire talent is far higher in terms of scale compared to even IT services. IT services used to hire more than the captives earlier, but I think the last 2 years we've seen the captives taken that leadership position. So from a hiring scale, they are there, but I'm not necessarily saying that they are the ones who drive usage of RPO and MSP, but even IT services companies or even product companies tend to use MSP and RPO programs. And many of them have been using it for several years, more than a decade or maybe even 2 decades. So they're very, very mature programs running today.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Anil. It's a pleasure talking to you as always. But one last question before we close for the day. What would you give as an advice to young staffing professionals who are coming into this industry, and what would you tell them to keep in mind for the future?
Yeah, normally, Arun, I refrain from giving any advice, but since you asked, I would say that if you're a new entrant, the staffing industry, as I mentioned, is a high growth segment. So I would say that give it a 2 to 3 year shot. Don't be in a rush to change jobs. If you're in the staffing industry, be there. That early 2 to 3 year sort of a stint could open more doors for you. Don't choose the beaten path. If you are somebody who has been in staffing industry, let's say for more than 5 years, I would say build a brand. I would say be data oriented, follow market macro trends. Could be with regards to industry, economy, or employment. Build a specialism in 1 or 2 industry segments. Be externally oriented. This could help you in the long run and could help you gain a lot of these leadership positions that are there. And I can tell you the staffing industry itself suffers from huge talent deficit. So if you are somebody who commits a certain number of years, initially it may be tough. But over a period of time, I think you can gain. And the staffing industry is going to be about $50-60 billion in the coming years. Let's say by 2030, 2035, there's going to be a lot more players. There's going to be a lot more opportunities if you commit a certain number of time frame. So I think the future is quite good for staffing industry professionals.
To summarize, hang in there, keep learning, and you're going to anyways be part of a very large industry in the next coming years. Thank you so much. With that, it's a very, very positive one to end the conversation today. I would have loved to ask a few more questions, a few more still there in my list, but respecting the time of everybody who's joined in to listen to you, thank you so much once again, Anil, for being part of this, and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thanks, Arun. It was good talking to you.